Iran has entered one of the darkest chapters in its modern history. Its longtime supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has been killed. Its military and nuclear sites have been struck, and the country now stands between an uneasy ceasefire and the possibility of another devastating war. But why did this happen? How did Iran become an enemy of the United States and Israel? Why has its nuclear program terrified the world? And why does Iran continue to resist, even after decades of sanctions, assassinations, revolutions, and war? In this video, we will uncover the entire story: the rise and fall of Persian empires, foreign invasions, the struggle for oil, the overthrow of governments, the Islamic Revolution, the creation of Iran's nuclear program, and the decisions that finally brought the country to this dangerous moment. But this story did not begin with nuclear weapons, America, or the Islamic Republic. To understand Iran today, we must travel back more than 2,300 years to 330 BC, when Alexander the Great marched into Persepolis and set the heart of the Persian Empire on fire. The world believed Persia was finished. It was not. This is the extraordinary story of a civilization that was conquered again and again, but somehow refused to die. This is the entire history of Iran. In 330 BC, Alexander the Great entered Persepolis, the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire. Its treasuries were looted, its palaces were set ablaze, and the monuments of Persia's greatest kings disappeared behind smoke and fire. Whether Alexander burned the city as revenge, political theater, or during a drunken celebration remains debated, but the result was clear. The world's most powerful empire had fallen. The last Persian king, Darius III, fled east while Alexander hunted him across the empire. But before Alexander could capture him, Darius was betrayed and killed by his own men. The dynasty that had ruled for more than 2 centuries ended, not in a final glorious battle, but through defeat, flight, and betrayal. Yet one mystery remained. How had Persia become so powerful that a Macedonian king had to cross continents to destroy it? How had a small kingdom in the mountains of Iran grown into an empire stretching from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean? To answer that, we must turn the clock back more than 2 centuries, to around 550 BC, when Persia was still a minor kingdom, ruled by a man named Cyrus. Cyrus did not inherit a great empire, he created one. Cyrus began as the ruler of Anshan, a relatively small Persian kingdom in southern Iran. Above him stood the far more powerful Median Empire, ruled by King Astyages. According to later traditions, Astyages was Cyrus's own grandfather, but whatever their family relationship, only one of them could control Iran. Around 550 BC, Cyrus rebelled. The armies of Persia and Media met in battle. But Astyages was betrayed by part of his own force. His capital, Ecbatana, fell, and Cyrus took control of the Median Empire. Yet instead of destroying the Medes, he absorbed their soldiers, nobles, and political traditions into his new kingdom. The conquered did not simply disappear. They became part of Cyrus's growing imperial system. But Cyrus was only beginning. To the west stood Lydia, one of the richest kingdoms of the ancient world, ruled by the famously wealthy King Croesus. Believing the new Persian kingdom was still vulnerable, Croesus marched east and attacked. Before going to war, he reportedly asked the Oracle of Delphi what would happen if he invaded Persia. The answer was mysterious. If you cross the river, a great empire will be destroyed. Croesus assumed that empire would be Persia. It was his own. Cyrus defeated Lydia and captured its capital, Sardis. Persia now controlled much of Asia Minor and stood dangerously close to the Greek world. Then Cyrus turned toward the greatest prize of all, Babylon. Babylon was protected by massive walls and had survived many enemies. But in 539 BC, Persian forces defeated the Babylonian army and entered the city. Cyrus presented himself not as a foreign destroyer, but as a legitimate ruler chosen to restore order. Temples were restored, religious practices were protected, and some displaced communities were permitted to return to their homelands. These policies were later recorded on the famous Cyrus cylinder. This was the secret behind Cyrus's success. He conquered with armies, but he often ruled through cooperation. Instead of forcing every people to become Persian, he allowed many of them to preserve their religions, customs, and local identities, as long as they accepted Persian authority. By the time Cyrus died in 530 BC, his empire stretched across a huge part of Western and Central Asia. In only a few decades, a minor Persian kingdom had become the foundation of the largest empire the ancient world had yet seen. But Cyrus's death created a dangerous question. Could the empire survive without the man who had built it? His son, Cambyses II, would push Persian power into Egypt, but his mysterious death would throw the empire into chaos, and from that chaos would rise the man who transformed Persia from a collection of conquests into a machine built to rule the ancient world, Darius the Great. Cyrus had created an empire, but his son intended to make it even larger. In 525 BC, Cambyses II marched toward Egypt, one of the richest and oldest kingdoms in the world. The decisive battle took place near Pelusium, at the entrance to the Nile Delta. The Egyptian army was defeated. The capital of Memphis surrendered, and the pharaoh was captured. For the first time, Persian territory stretched from Central Asia to the banks of the Nile, but victory in Egypt was followed by disaster. Later, Greek writers described Cambyses as a cruel and unstable ruler who insulted Egyptian religion and killed the sacred Apis bull. However, these stories were written largely by Persia's enemies, and Egyptian evidence does not fully support them. Cambyses may have been harsh. The famous image of a completely mad Persian king was probably exaggerated. Then, while Cambyses was still far from Persia, disturbing news arrived. A man had taken the Persian throne and claimed to be Bardia, the younger son of Cyrus. According to the official Persian story, the real Bardia had already been secretly murdered. The man now sitting on the throne was supposedly an impostor named Gaumata. Cambyses immediately began traveling back to Persia, but he never arrived. In 522 BC, he died under mysterious circumstances. Some accounts claim that he accidentally wounded himself. Others suggest suicide, illness, or assassination. Whatever the truth, the empire of Cyrus suddenly had no clear ruler, while a mysterious man controlled the throne. But inside Cambyses' army was a Persian nobleman named Darius. Darius claimed descent from the Achaemenid royal family, but he was not the obvious heir. He joined 6 other Persian nobles, entered the royal palace, and killed the man they called Gaumata. Darius then declared himself the new king of kings. But a question still remains. Was Gaumata truly an impostor? Or had Darius killed the real son of Cyrus and invented the story to justify taking the throne? We may never know. Most of the surviving account comes from Darius himself. He ordered his version of the story to be carved high on a mountain at Behistun, written in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. The inscription shows Darius standing over a defeated enemy, while captured rebels wait before him. It was not only a historical record, it was a warning. Darius was king, and anyone who challenged him would be destroyed, and many people did challenge him. As soon as Darius seized power, rebellions broke out across the empire. Babylon rebelled, Media rebelled, Egypt, Persia, and several eastern regions resisted his authority. Local rulers declared themselves kings, and the empire created by Cyrus appeared to be collapsing from within. Darius responded quickly and violently. According to his own inscription, he fought repeated battles and defeated several rival kings. Within roughly 1 year, the revolts had been crushed, the rebel leaders had been punished, and the empire had survived its greatest internal crisis. But Darius understood something important. Conquering an empire was difficult. Keeping it united was even harder. So Darius transformed Persia from a collection of conquered territories into an organized imperial system. He divided the empire into administrative provinces, commonly called satrapies. Each satrapy was ruled by a governor called a satrap. These governors collected taxes, recruited soldiers, and maintained order, but they remained answerable to the king. Royal inspectors traveled through the empire and watched these governors carefully, preventing them from becoming independent rulers. Darius also reorganized taxation and introduced a more regular system of tribute. He issued gold coins that could circulate across the empire. He expanded roads connecting distant regions and strengthened the famous Royal Road, allowing soldiers, messages, and information to move quickly between the imperial capitals and western Anatolia. Under Darius, the Persian Empire stretched from Egypt and Anatolia to Central Asia and the Indus Valley. Its people spoke different languages, followed different religions, and lived according to different traditions. But all of them recognized the authority of one ruler, the Persian king of kings. Darius also began turning Persepolis into a magnificent ceremonial capital. Its stairways and stone reliefs showed delegations from across the empire, bringing gifts to the Persian ruler. It was a carefully created image of many different nations living under one imperial order. Persia had survived rebellion. It was now richer, more organized, and more powerful than ever. But at the western edge of the empire stood several small and fiercely independent Greek cities. Some had already begun resisting Persian rule, and Darius feared that rebellion could spread. Soon, Persian,